All right, welcome everybody to the Ohana information session for Warrior Wayfinder Day. Um, as we go through this, as we've had before, make sure if you do have questions, you put them into the chat. I'm not going to take too long on this today. I'm going to try to get through in time for everything, but also I know that with Ohana, we oftentimes have a lot of questions that come up. So we will see if we can answer some of those today as well, or at least point you in the right direction if it's not us who can answer that for you. So to begin, the idea of supporting new students, it's done by multiple people. The phrase "it takes a village" is always the case. So it's both, the parents, but also other family members and other supporters. So when we're looking at that, folks like other teachers or friends or counselors that are there to help ensure the success of students to be able to get through college. So that's why we do this session, not as a parent session, but as an Ohana session, because we know not everybody is necessarily a parent who is helping the student navigate through college. So then we move to the academic advising thing. So who are the advisors? What do we do? So essentially, we monitor the academic progress of students. We help them to graduate on time or to graduate in the time that they plan to finish. Um, we also help teach them how to understand the degree requirements because a lot of times having to know all these different things are a lot more difficult in college because in high school somebody just said, hey, here's what happens. But in college and even for transfer students, moving from one college to another, requirements can change or they can differ. So we want to make sure that students are understanding why they have the things that they need to complete to finish. And then lastly, who is their academic advisor? That is a question that is always asked. Like I said, that is probably the most common question that we have come in, and I will try to remember to drop some links in the chat. So, what I linked to was the advising guide. So, advising guide allows folks to be able to look by individual major and then see where is the advising unit that my student needs to work with. So, this is what you can use to help kind of point your students to the right direction for their specific advisor or advisors, because sometimes they'll have multiple folks that they can work with. So, what's advising about? What are the responsibilities for that? From the student standpoint, it's simple. We want the student to actually take some initiative throughout their academic career. It's not just going to be told to them. We're not there to remind them every time a date comes up or things happen. So they should be asking questions, and if they're beginning to feel concerned about something, they should ask somebody about it. So that's the student role in it. But from the advisor role, we're helping them navigate their academic journey and beyond. So a lot of times it's what do I do after this? What are my career directions? We have advisors that can help point them in the right direction and give them the options that are there for their particular field. And then lastly, for family and supporters on here, it's just to provide ongoing support, um, to encourage them, to point them in the direction of something that you want them to be able to know about, that you may have heard in a session like this, where you're like, hey, I heard that you need to talk with somebody at this point. Maybe you should go do that. So sometimes it's as simple as that. So we want to make sure that you kind of understand a little bit of that as we go through today's session on it. All right. So with that, when we switch next, is something that's important to know about. So the Educational Rights and Privacy Act of 1974, also known as the Buckley Amendment, for the senator who brought that forward. But what this deals with is it deals with student educational privacy for their records. So just like you would experience in the health field with HIPAA, FERPA covers educational records. So in other words, if an Ohana member asks us, hey, how is Kai doing in their English class? The answer that we will have to give is That's a great question. You should probably talk to Kai. Because we actually don't have the ability to give that information to a third party. And what's important in here is highlighted on this slide, which is that the rights transfer to the student when he or she reaches the age of 18 or attends a school beyond the high school level. So even if they're 17 years old and in college, they now are the ones that are owners of their own educational record. So as a result, if a student wants somebody else to be able to have access to things, they can always request in writing to have somebody have access to that information. But it does need to be from the student. It does need to be in writing. And there are kind of safeguards for that so that we're not disclosing information that needs to be there. Um, a good example of this, and it's a bit of a horror story that I dealt with at a previous institution, was that when it came down to it, uh, the parents were like kind of like, oh, whatever, FERPA things. Guess what? I have my students' passwords, so I can get into their account. And what ended up happening was that the student, I'll just say the mother in particular, was like, I know this better than my student does, and apparently better than the advisor did either. So I think that they should be taking this course in their first year. Actually went in, logged in as a student, changed the student's registration, switched the class out. What didn't happen was the student wasn't informed that their courses changed. So come the end of the semester, a student has done an entire class where they were getting zero credit for it because they weren't registered for it. And then secondly, they actually got an F in the other course that they were registered for. They submitted a petition to say, can I have that course changed? And ultimately, the registrar's office looked it up and said, on this date, at this time, you as a student logged into your record and changed your courses. So, no, we can't change either one of them, which means that we can't give you credit for the one that you were attending, nor can we take away the F that you got in the course that you signed up for. So that's a very extreme aspect of things, but it does happen. And that's why it's always important to make sure that you let the student do what they need to do. You help guide them along and encourage them. And you make sure to encourage them to talk with the appropriate folks at the university to make sure that they're on the right track as they go through their studies. All right, so timeline things that you need to know about. First of all, we have 2 or 3 semesters. So we have a fall semester, which runs from mid-August to mid-December. We have a spring semester that goes from mid-January to mid-May. And we have a summer term that goes from late May to sometime in August. It varies from each year. With that, I think it's important to know that um, especially those who are coming from high school, there's a big change on there, mainly being that they may not be used to having a month break between the end of their fall term and the start of their spring term. And then, of course, they had the summer. And the summer, a lot of people think, oh, I'm going to do everything and do a whole bunch of stuff in the summer because I've got time to do that. But also keep in mind that our summer terms are shorter. So we have 2 general summer terms. So those are actually only about 6 to 8 weeks long. When you look at that in comparison to a regular semester, which is about 15 or 16 weeks long, that means you're doing the course material in half or even a third of the amount of time. So taking a full load during the summer isn't quite something that you would want to be doing unless you have kind of experienced that and you're prepared to deal with what you need to during that term. So then we have advising. So advising, very simply, you want to do advising before you register because you want to make sure that when you register for courses, you're taking the appropriate courses. Then that gets us into the actual registration time so that you know as well and can support students on this. Registering for the spring semester, it starts in November. Registering for the summer, that starts in March. And registering for the fall starts in April. And I don't know about you, but a lot of the students I encounter aren't thinking about things that are 4 months in advance to be like, I need to get in this course right now for a course I'm going to be in 4 months from now. Um, so knowing that, we want to make sure that what your role is to help let students know to make that decision because they may be waiting to do things until the last minute. But in a university of nearly 20,000 students, it is a lot of people trying to get into a few number of courses. So, knowing that their ideal course that they want to take might not be available. So, take advantage of that time. A little rule of thumb that I like to give to both students and supporters on this is simply this. You need to remember two dates. I'm going to assume that the first date you're all going to know, which is when is Halloween? I'm gonna guess you all know that. So, and if I already be in person, you'd be able to say, yes, that's the 31st of October. So I like to say that if it's Halloween and you haven't had a conversation with your student yet about what they are thinking about doing for the next semester, it's Halloween, you need to be a little scared because they might be late in the process. Because when does registration start? November. The 31st of October is the last day of October. So they need to get in there and actually get going on planning things. Because again, every returning student, I should say, not the graduating ones, are going in to see their advisor at the same time. So that means around that late October time, when the scheduled classes for the next semester comes out, we're getting thousands of students all trying to meet with about 60 advisors on the campus. So schedules fill up very quickly. So it's important to make sure that they're thinking early about that process. And they will be notified in advance that, hey, these dates are coming up and start thinking about getting the appointment scheduled. So again, Halloween is one date. The second date, which you wouldn't necessarily know about, but we know from the higher ed standpoint, would be spring break. Spring break for us generally occurs in March. It's about the middle of March. That's usually about the time that it happens. And on that one, I do the same approach on that. If your student has not met or talked or thought about or planned an appointment with their advisor, their break is over early. They need to start looking at getting that planned out, and they need to start meeting with folks. Um, so easiest way for me to put it is on your end, you can look at it and be like, okay, ooh, it's almost Halloween. I should probably just do something. It doesn't mean to nag them and say, why haven't you seen anybody or what's going on? It's simply being like, hey, by the way, have you thought about next semester yet? That's all you need to say. And it might prompt them to be like, oh, no, I haven't. And you've been like, oh, you can always get an appointment with an advisor now. And then that way it will prompt them to actually take that step, take that initiative to meet with somebody. Um, see, that's where it can be very helpful. So again, remember those two dates. I always like they're easy dates to remember: spring break, Halloween. Um, they happen every year. Uh, the registration dates are always the same times every year. So the whole 4 years, that's an easy way to support them on being able to get appropriate advising for their registration. All right. So then after the timeline, we'll talk about the advising appointment. So there are different types of appointments that they can have. So they can schedule appointments. They can do that. Just about everybody does them in the way where they can be in person, they can be by phone, they can be like this via a Zoom meeting. So you don't necessarily need to be physically here on the campus to do an advising appointment. Um, and then also the appointments and the offerings of them, they vary by the individual school or the individual college. So some may look at it and say, oh, we only have 20-minute appointments. Some Probably the most common is it's a half-hour appointment. Some may say, no, we want you for an hour because there are certain things that we want to make sure that you cover on there. And the easiest way for me to put it is if they say an hour, then that means that there's stuff that the student's going to need to make sure that they're ready to cover during that hour. So a lot of times it's for more selective programs or things where they may be an exploratory student, so it's trying to figure out what's that next step to get closer to finding a major to pursue. And then for the appointment preparation, I talked about the initiative that they should be taking. Um, they should be talking about the items that need to be clarified, questions that they have for that. Um, any questions that they have about the courses. What is this about? What does this mean? Um, what is this astrology course about? To which I always correct them. It's actually astronomy, not astrology. They're two different things. So making sure that they know what's going on with these courses. Um, and then any like potential desired courses that they want to take. So if they have an idea of next semester, the one thing I do know is that I want to take the next language course. Great. We can start with that and then work things around that. Because many courses you have a number of options on. So, like if you have a social science course that needs to be taken, they're going to be limited to about 300 different sections that they can take for a social science course. So, not as critical as maybe a course that they need to take for their major, where there's literally one section and they need to get into that one section. So, that way they can work around the courses that they need to have that are more critical and then fill it in with the other ones they have options to fill their schedule. All right. Then after that, what we've got is the actual registration stuff. So on here, we've got a couple of things to help out. So a lot of times that is a big question that students have is, how do I go about registering for classes? So these links on here, first of all, the STAR site, that actually gives you on there, there's a little question mark in the upper right corner when a student is logged in that will bring them to the help menu. That help menu has a number of videos and things like that. But what I'm going to give you directly here, which we've linked on there, is the YouTube video. And the YouTube video is literally how to register on Star at UH. So it goes kind of step by step. Obviously, it's YouTube, so it allows you to pause it and do that at the same time that you're concurrently doing it on your own registration system. So that's where it can be really helpful for students to look at that tutorial to see what's going on. But again, that little question mark on Star is the help menu, and there's actually chat folks that are there that support just the Star system that can help students out if they're having any technical issues as they're going through it. All right, beyond registration, this is what can be helpful to know, which is the anatomy of a degree. What does a student do to graduate? So there's a number of things that they can have. I put the major categories in bold. So we have our general education, which are the courses that are universally done across most universities for that matter. So you've got foundations, which are basic foundational courses that you take. You have diversification courses, which are all of the breadth of courses that students need to take to be a well-rounded student when they finish. Then you have graduation requirements. These are things more specific to Mānoa and what we're asking for. Um, we have focus courses, which are courses that focus on a particular topic. They can be in any major or any department that runs them, but they just want to make sure that they deal with certain issues like Hawaiian Asian Pacific issues or oral communications or writing intensive courses. Now, many of those courses can overlap with other courses that the student needs to take. So they don't need to be standalone courses within the focus area. They may also have a Hawaiian or second language. So depending on their major and that college, they may or may not require a second language completed. So at the maximum, other than language majors, you need to complete 2 years of a language. And in some majors, you don't need to do language at all. And then some of them have a combination somewhere in between that as well. So that's important in the next event is to be able to kind of see if they have any type of language requirement for their particular college or their majors within there. And then the last graduation things are going to be numbers. So what are the minimum number of credits for the university as a whole? 120 is the minimum credits to graduate. That could vary from program to program, but most of them have stuck right around the 120. And GPA wise, that also varies by program, varies by college, but at the very minimum, that's a 2.0. Most or many majors actually require a higher GPA than that, or they require a GPA within their particular major courses to make sure that they're doing well within there. So then the next major section then are, well, I didn't mean to do a pun there, but is the major courses. So all the courses for the specialization that the student wants to pursue. So that's going to be a variation anywhere from, about 30 credits to 85 credits, depending on the major. So that's going to really vary. So it might be a lot or a little of the number of credits that they need to finish. Next are minors or certificates for that matter. And I say if applicable, because if a student chooses to do a minor or a certificate, they can do that. Are they required to do it? Most programs do not require a student to do a minor. But again, that is something to inquire with the individual college or major to see whether or not they require any other additional work within there. And then lastly, electives. So all electives are after we look at the general education and graduation requirements and major and minor stuff, if there's any additional courses that need to be done or credits that need to be done in order to reach that minimum of 120, or maybe a minimum number of upper level courses, courses that are number 300 or higher. Those are things that are electives. They can be any subject area as long as you're receiving credit for them and as long as they are at the level that you need them to be at. So if they need to be upper level, then they've got to be 300 or higher numbered courses. So that was a lot of information in a short time as far as the requirements go. But your student will see this more. It's also laid out for them in STAR. So it kind of already shows them if they've got specific things that need to be completed there. All right. So then the next steps of what we've got going on here is that we want to make sure that students have worked through and completed the steps on the accepted student checklist. So I will drop that link into the chat as well. Um, but again, always it's a checklist. So just go through and make sure those things are done. A number of them I'm sure they have done, but there may be things that they're still pending. And that includes things that we talked about earlier today, like health clearances or other things that we didn't have, like housing information and things like that. So make sure that you're going through all those steps on there to make sure things are lined up and ready to go to start for the year. And then, as mentioned before, we do have new student advising videos. So these are kind of online videos that kind of go over um, things that will help out students in the advising process. It is important to know that this is not mandatory that you go through it, but when you go to that site, which brings you to the YouTube for and the playlist for it, it will show you all different topics that deal with it. So if there's something they want to learn more about, I don't think any of them last longer than 5 minutes. So they're quick, which, as many of you know, is important for students these days that they want those things to be short. So we've tried to keep them as short as possible, but to give them the information that they need to help out in that transition. And then again, to remind you, the next session after this, which we've got another 8 minutes before it will start, is that it's a college and school information and meet and greet session. So a chance to be able to learn about the individual colleges a little bit more, to possibly meet some of the advisors as well as in some cases, they will have an opportunity for advising. It also varies. Some of them do a presentation, some of them are not present. And in that case, I would refer back to what we referred earlier, which was the advising guide to be able to see how to reach that individual unit, to be able to follow up and do a more individual advising with them. But yeah, so you've got those sessions. Some of them are like an open kiosk where they can actually do an advising appointment one-on-one with a advisor. Most are just more informational about stuff to know about the college and stuff to be ready for and events to be able to know about. And to let you know how to do that, here is kind of a quick overview of what that looks like. So as you go in to the main visit days area, if you go to the exhibitors page, which is circled there at the very top, and let me give that link here real quick. What you can do there is then you can see all the different units that are available. So, you can say, okay, let's look here and look at this. Um, oh, let me find one that's on here. Okay, maybe it's not that great of a one that I use because there is another one that's on here. Or sorry, they're going to have all the different colleges on here as you click on it as well. So when you're on the Visit Days site, you'll be able to see the ones that are being offered for today. So um, yeah, so that's kind of what it looks like. This isn't a direct representation of it, but it shows you kind of you click on it and then be able to get the access to those locations or the link to them, etc. And if you do have questions about any of them, or you don't see your college here and you want to get more information about it, you can always email the not the visit days, but the advising day or um, Warrior Wayfinder Day email, which is just advisday at hawaii.edu, and we'll be able to respond to any questions that you have within there that may be more individualized. And with that, that is all that I have for the session today. I know we've got a few things that have been asked without throughout here. Um, So I'll answer some of them live that are sitting on there. So question was, how do I get in contact with the VA office? So um, the VA office or the Veteran Services Office can be reached by email or by web. So you can always just look up, I want to say that it might be manoa.hawaii.edu/veteran, or their email address, which I know and I'll put in the chat, is obss at hawaii.edu, which is the Office of Veteran Student Services. Yeah. And Charity?
I was just going to say too, it depends on what your question is. So if you want to type in the Q&A section exactly what your question is, because some questions are better answered by the Office of the Registrar. So
Yeah. Yeah. And that Student Services Office also has like links in there that actually on their page link to the registrar. So they work very closely together on things. All right. So then anything else that we've got on here? So the DAP program, anything that's on there for a business session, that would be where you'd be able to find that information. So you can go directly there. Um, and then the link for, again, the links to the individual college sessions are back on visit days. So you'll have a little tile that you can click on to be able to get there. Um, And then last thing that I know was mentioned in there, but I know other people may be asking about it is in regards to AP. So like AP stuff, one of the reasons why our registration date is the date that we have it is so that we have time to receive AP scores and get those loaded in to be able to show that those credits are being awarded. Before students register. That way, students aren't registering for classes then all of a sudden having to change everything up after everybody's registered. So we've had the start time a little bit later to be able to accommodate that. All right, and let's see if there's anything else on here. Um, okay, so registration dates for the fall, just to clarify that, because somebody that was a good question somebody asked. It looks like the dates for the fall have already passed. Yes, that is correct, but that's for continuing students. All new students were given the dates in July to be able to register. So it's not too late for students like that, or students that are within this session for that matter. Also, you're not competing with seniors for courses because you're not taking any senior level courses as an incoming freshman or a starting student. So it's different courses that are being put on, and it's also a way for them to be able to adjust it and be like, I think we need to open up more seats if we're already this full before new students have even registered. So yeah, so that has not passed yet for the fall, but for the future semesters, after the very first semester, it's always a little bit later that it starts. You actually get that. I'm sorry, it's always a little bit earlier that registration begins for the following semester. And yes, going back to veteran stuff, yes, they help with the process. There's actually an electronic process that works with our system already to show whether the courses are applicable to the student's degree and therefore qualify to meet the requirements for um, veteran benefits. So the question in regards to VA benefits, yes, they will help with that as far as getting that going. Um, Other thing to note, just so that folks know about it as well, is that if you didn't know, we have something called a tuition cap here at Manoa. So what that means is you're paying by each individual credit. So a student can take, maybe they're taking one course and doing just 3 credits. They're paying for three. Maybe it's a 4 credit course. They're paying one more credit for that of tuition. But once you hit 12 credits at Manoa, we cap your tuition. So whether you're taking 12 or you're taking 19, it's still the same amount of cost, which is the amount like 19 credits would cost the same as you taking 12. So we don't charge anything extra beyond that full-time 12 credits. So that can be very helpful for students wanting to put extra effort in and be able to finish in a more timely manner as we go through. The other thing that can be helpful to know about, particularly for those who are out of state, is that during the summer, Manoa doesn't do in-state, out-of-state WUI tuition. Everything in the summer is the same rate, which is equivalent to in-state tuition. So if they wanted to take something there, they could. Last benefit that I'll mention before jumping to the next session and closing this is that if a student is at Manoa, they are actually allowed to take courses through the community college in Hawaii if they want to. So they don't need to apply for it. They don't need to send transcripts back and forth because it's already like an agreement between our institutions to be able to do that. So also a nice little benefit for students coming in. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and I see we are at time, and I know we started a little late, so I appreciate your patience with all of that. But I will let you all go here and then jump into your individual school or college sessions. And we hope that you got information out of here. And if you have anything else you have questions about, you can always reach out to us at the advisday@hawaii.edu email address. So thank you all. Enjoy the rest of your day.